The next topic is reconciling four different models. Now, within this, four different models come into play when a user interface is analyzed and designed. Uh, Within one of the question paper, this statement was given and you had to write the answer. And so you need to remember this. If the statement is given within the question paper, this is the answer that you need to write. So what are the four different models that are going to come into play when the user interface is analyzed and designed? That is when you're designing your, so whenever you're designing the interface of a particular application or you're analyzing the features, you're going, these four different models are going to be implemented. The first one is the user's profile model. Now, this is established by the human engineer or the software engineer. That is based upon the user. You're going to get to know the user. And this first one we are going to study in detail. The next one is the design model. Now, this design model was created by the software engineer. That is, you'll get to know what are the different interfaces, how this interface is going to look like, what is going to be the layout, what type of input is acceptable. That will be known within the design model. The next is the implementation model. This implementation model is created by the implementers. When you know what is the interface, what is the layout, you're going to identify how these different interfaces are going to work out. Then you've got the user's mental model. Now, this user's mental model, it is developed when the user when interacting with the application. That is how the user knows the system, how much knowledge he has, or how the user is going to interact with this application. At that time, you create the user's mental model. Now, the role of the interface designer is to reconcile these differences and drive a consistent representation of the interface. Now, first one, the user's profile model. Establish the profile of the end user of the system. That is, you're going to get to know the age, gender, if there are any physical abilities or disabilities, what is the education of the person, culture or ethnic background. You're going to get to know the user's profile. Whenever a person is being employed, he needs to fill in the details. What are his motivation, goals, personality. Then the second one is consider the syntactic knowledge of the user. Now, what is the syntactic knowledge? The syntactic knowledge is the level of interaction that are required to use the interface effectively. How much interaction with the software that a particular person has so that he can use that particular interface effectively. That is your syntactic knowledge. Whereas the semantic knowledge is the sense of the application. Is is that the application is going to do, the functions, what functions it has, what type of input can be given, what output you are going to get based upon your input, and what is the objective of the system. So in detail he knows about the application functions, behaviors, each of the things that is called as your semantic knowledge. So two types of knowledge as there, syntactic and semantic. Now, the users are also characterized into three types. The first type is your novice user. Now, this novice user, he has got no syntactic knowledge of the system and he has got little semantic knowledge, completely null syntactic knowledge and a little of your semantic knowledge. Only general computer users, that is, if you use the computer, you can get results faster, or some simple task, you'll get to know, the novice user knows. The second one is knowledgeable intermittent users. This means that you've got reasonable semantic knowledge of the system. That is, you've got a reasonable knowledge, little knowledge, about the functions of the system, the input, outputs that can be given. So you've got reasonable semantic knowledge, but he's got low recall of syntactic knowledge. That is what he needs to do. That is, it's like if suppose a person was working on computer, but after a long time, he's got a low recall. The system can perform so and so tasks, but how he is forgotten. So that is your knowledge intermittent user. Whereas the next one is knowledgeable frequent user. Now, this knowledgeable frequent user means he's got good semantic as well as syntactic knowledge. He's good in both of them, semantic and syntactic knowledge. Now, when he has the good semantic and syntactic knowledge, I heard that when a person has good knowledge about a particular application, is going to look for different shortcuts how he can complete the job within the limited time. So this knowledge is collected at the user profile model. Now the next one is the user interface analysis. Only one we've studied that in detail. The next is user interface analysis. Now within this user interface analysis, what are the different elements of the user interface? Now the different elements of the user interface is that to perform user interface analysis, the practitioner needs to study and understand four elements. Now those four elements are your users, tasks, content, and the work environment. Now the user who will interact with the system through the interface, he's called as your user. Whereas tasks are what are the tasks that the user is going to perform to get the work done. And the content is what content you're going to get from the interface or you're going to pass on to the interface. That is your content. Then work environment is what under what environment you're working, whether it is real time, what type of environment is that you're going to identify. So these are the four different elements of your user interface. Now coming on to the user analysis. Now in user analysis, the analysis strives to get the end user's mental model. Now when was the user's mental model created? When he is directly interacting with the application. When you interact directly with the application, you create at that time the user's mental model. So this mental model can be created by the user themselves or how the people use the system. These two, by making use of these two things, you can create a mental model. Now, how are you going to collect the information about the user or how the people use the system? This can be done in four ways. Now, these four ways are user interface, user interview. That is, you can talk in person with each person so that you can get the information about themselves and how they use the system. Or the sales input. Now the sales input means how the customer are reacting, how the useful how the sorry how the customers are connected to a specific application, how they interact with them on the regular basis or not. The next is marketing input. Now this marketing input, it is based upon the market analysis. That is how much percentage of people are interested in some specific technology or how much percentage of people are interested in a specific application. That is called as your marketing input. Then you've got the support input. Now in the support input, that is when a particular application is used by a set of people, there are people that are going to support the application, that is are going to provide updates, any errors, bugs can be removed. So these you can get the information from these support people. As these support people are making changes within the application, they get to know what are the different changes that the user wants. So based upon that, you get the information and you can make the you can get create a user's mental model. So within the user analysis, at these phases, a set of questions are asked at the user analysis stage. The next one, so these are the questions that are listed here. Are the users trained professionals, technicians, or manufacturing workers? Now, when you know what type of people they are, you can design the application based upon their work. That is, if they would require some sophisticated tools, those can be added, or only simple tools can be there. What level of education does the average user have? That is, if he has a good education on the computer knowledge, then you can have some sophisticated tools. If you've got only basic knowledge, then you need to make the application as simple as possible. Then, are the users capable of learning on their own from written material? That is, if you give some learning guides, some installation procedures, whether these people can do it or you need to teach them by conducting training sessions, that also need to be identified. Then, are the users expert typist or they are keyboard phobic? That is, whether they can make use of shortcuts or they're just going to go directly and do each and every step. And what is the age range? Now based upon this age range also, you can identify how people are interested in learning. And then, will the user be represented prominently by one gender? That is, whether you're going to separate the genders within the application, how they work. Then, do users work normal office hours or whenever the job is required. That is whether they're going to work from 9 to 5 or some specific timings are there, once in a week, once in a month, twice, that can be identified. The next is, will the user be, sorry, do you, is the software be an integral part of the work the users do? That is whether the software is going to play an important role within their daily task, or they are going to be used occasionally. So these 6 and 7 points, they are relatable. Then what is the primary spoken language among the users? So based upon that, you can focus that application to be built in that specific language. Or if everyone has a knowledge of English, they can use English, or they can make changes. You can provide multiple languages also. And the next one is, what are the consequences if a user makes a mistake using the system? Now, whether if a specific mistake is being done, whether you can undo the changes can be there, or the entire data will be lost. What are the features that are available? You can get to know that. Then do users want to know about the technology that sits behind the interface? That is, what is working behind the interface, what the operating system is, how file management is done, whether all of these things need to be known to the user or they should not be known to the user. This needs to be identified. So all these questions are asked within the users analysis. Then the next one is task analysis and modeling. Now, within this task analysis and modeling, task analysis is going to strive to know and understand. Task analysis means you're going to focus upon knowing and understanding what the work that the user is going to perform in some specific circumstance, or what are the different tasks, subtasks that they are going to perform, or what are the sequence of the work task. That is, first they need to complete first task, then second task can they need to implement, then third task need to be implemented, or what is the hierarchy of tasks. That is, only when two is completed you can go for three. So that is a hierarchy of tasks. You get to know the order of the task. If suppose task one has got subtasks are there, that are also can also be identified. Then the next one is use cases. Now use cases is, it is going to show an end user perform some specific work related task. Now in use cases, you get to know the behavior of the system. What is internal to the system, what is external, what is the relationship between them, you get to know by making use of the use case diagram. So it is a behavioral diagram. Then it enables the software engineer to extract the tasks. That is, when you create a use case diagram, you are going to create this use case diagram from the user's point of view. So when you're creating diagram from the user's point of view, you get to know the different tasks that the different users are going to perform, and what is going to be the workflow of the interaction. That's, if suppose within a bank the user wants to open an account. To open the account, he requires some PAN card number is there, he needs to give in his details. So when you put in these PAN numbers or the different details, then you have this bank person, that is the administrator at the bank. He is going to verify all these details, and when the admin is going to accept the form, then your account can be created. Then it also helps the software engineer to identify additional helpful features. That is, within the use case, you can model based upon the, if there is one user, if there is another type of user, if there is a NRI user, what are going the different tasks that the user can perform. There's an NRE user, what are the different tasks that can be performed. So this is going to give you additional features based upon the different set of users. And the next one is the content analysis. Now, the display content may range from character-based reports to graphical displays to multimedia information. That is, whatever user interface you're using, it depends upon the user's choice. It can be character-based, or it can have images, or it is going to be MP3, MP4 files. This is your This is the completely user's choice. Now this display content, that is this character based files, graphical displays, or this multimedia files, they can be generated by components in another part of the application. That is, one particular application is composed of many components. So which component is going to perform that specific task, that can be done and then forwarded to another component. The next is acquired from data stored in a database. That is this display content. If suppose you're fetching some graphical images, this can be also fetched from a database that is accessible by the application. That this can be either collected to a cloud, or this can be the ones that are stored within the application, or you can also have uh, images that we want to include that are gathered from web search. The next one is the format of this content needs to be considered. That is, what is going to be the format of the GUI design, the multimedia. This needs to be defined. Then a set of questions should be answered during the content analysis. Now, within the previous user analysis, you've answered a set of few questions. This again, you're going to have a few set of content questions within the content analysis. The first one is, are various types of data assigned to consistent locations on the screen? That is, whether photos are going to be always in the upper right corner, or the attaching file is going to be at what position, that needs to be identified, or the position is going to be changing, that needs to be identified. Then, are users able to customize the screen location for content? That is, if suppose the photo is available at the right corner, whether they can make changes and get it to the left side, or that can be identified. Then, is proper on-screen identification assigned to all the content? That is, how the content is placed, whether this is done for all objects or not. Then, can large reports be partitioned for ease of understanding? That is, if you've got very large files, whether these large files, whether they can be split into different modules. Then, are mechanisms available for moving directly to summary information for large collection of data? That is, whether a large file, whether it can be summarized or not, that is identified. Then, is graphical output scaled to fit within the bounds of the display device that is used? That is, within uh, many applications, you've got the mobile view option is also there. So how you're going to arrange the content based upon the mobile view or the standard view? How color is used to enhance the understanding? That is, you can give specific color to specific objects for better understanding. Then, how are error messages and warning messages presented? That is, if there is an error within a specific message, how you're going to get that? Whether you're going to get a dialog box that says that there is an error, or you can get that via mail, that is going to be identified. So these are the questions that is going to help uh, identify how the content is going to be displayed within the specific application. So these are the set of questions that are going to be asked. The next is the work environment analysis. Now, within the work environment analysis, you've got the software products that need to be designed to fit into the work environment. Otherwise, they may be difficult or frustrating to use. So, if suppose there is some specific limitation, the specific limitation based upon the size of the file that can be updated. So that is going to be one of the constraint. If suppose every time you need to update files that are, sometimes when you're uploading documents, they need to be less than 100 MB or less than 50 MB. So if suppose you've got some constraints, that is going to be a headache for the users that are using this specific application. Then the next one is factors to consider while you're working upon the work environment analysis is, what is going to be the display size and height, that is your layout, keyboard size, height, ease of use. In your phones, you have this option where you can customize the keyboard size, height, Then mouse, what is the mouse type, ease of use. There are different options for mouse types, whether the mouse is going to be displayed every time or only when it is moved, only when a stroke is being performed. Then what is the surrounding noise, space limitations for computer and for user, that is how much memory is there, how much memory files can be uploaded, weather or other atmospheric conditions, how they're going to affect the application. Sometimes if the weather is bad, you've got this Wi-Fi signals, they are very weak. So based upon that, you get to know those. Then temperature or pressure restrictions, if those are, if you've got any temperature or pressure restrictions for specific applications, you get to know that. Then if suppose within a server room the temperature is very high, it becomes very difficult for those files to be accessed. So that is why you've got air conditions that are placed within the temperature within the server rooms. Then time restrictions, these are when, how fast and for how long the systems are going to run, by what time you can access them, by after what time you cannot access this. That is going to be identified in the work environment analysis.